we did a bit of a recap last week, but what we've already covered, we're here, of course, to look at the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And we have already covered the introduction. So we've covered part 1, which was paradigms and principles, and the theory of working from the inside out. So starting with, if you want to change anything in your life, start by looking at yourself and what you need to change in order to attract the different results that you seek. So very much focusing on that, repeating that message, that it all starts with change your attitude or change your perspective, change the way you look at things, and the things you look at will change. That was the Wayne Dyer quote, wasn't it? The 7 Habits, an overview. So he just gave an introduction into what he's going to tell us in the rest of the book. That's that old saying, isn't it? Tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you've told them. that's the key to presenting successfully, isn't it? So then we went into part 2, which was private victory. And the first habit there was to be proactive. So principles of personal vision. So it was about not just the proactive in the sense of, as it's used as a management term, you know, be proactive rather than reactive. It was about being proactive in terms of visualizing, creatively visualizing ahead of what you want, rather than just sort of letting life drift you along. It was about really claiming the lifestyle that you want, and well, having a vision, having a clear idea of where you want to go. And habit 2 was really sort of reinforcing that, was that the principle of personal leadership is that you want to take control of yourself. You're the only person you can really control. The rest of the world we can try to influence, but we can never control anybody else. We can only work on ourselves. So seeing what you want as this creative visualization concept that is so readily reinforced by all the motivational speakers and authors is the concept of seeing something in your mind's eye first, and having a clear vision of what it is that you want and why you want it, and then the how to will sort of come to you as you move along. Does anyone want to add anything to that hugely fast, succinct summary of what we've covered so far? Did I miss anything there that you think should be included for the benefit of anybody? Well, for all of us, really. Anyone want to jump in and say anything? Oh, it's very quiet. Crickets. Okay. So I'm just going to flick through to the book here. There was quite a number of good exercises that you could do in that last chapter in habit 2 there, particularly about figuring out what your mission is. And so again, similar to what we were just talking about before the call started there officially, was about that, you know, this sort of looking at all areas of your life and seeing what your roles are, and which roles are you playing in your life. You know, are you a husband, wife, son, daughter, partner, colleague, all different areas that we have, community member? What are the roles that you have? Because your mission in each area might be slightly different, or you might have different things that you need to focus on. So really just digging down into, as he put it, this chart at the end here was the different areas of activity, different focuses, different roles. And in terms of what do you need to develop in your character? Where are you making contributions, and what are the achievements that you want to aim for? So really having a really good sort of introspective look at your life and where it's going, where you want it to go. The principles don't change, our understanding of them does. So very much talking about this, having correct principles as a foundation for developing yourself. All right. Well, we'll go on to habit 3. Put first things first. Dun, dun, dun. Pretty exciting stuff. So we've got this journey. We're moving on from dependence, where we start off as a child dependent on our parents for the necessities of life. And we move through that stage to independence. And how we do that? Well, let's put first things first. And from independence, we're going to go on to interdependence. But you can't really go on to interdependence until you've become independent. Does that make sense? All right.
Mm-hmm.
So it starts with a quote from Goethe: "Things which matter most must never be at the mercy of things which matter least." So he starts with two very powerful questions, such as we might be encountering on Sunday. V. Question one: what one thing could you do that you probably aren't doing now, that if you did on a regular basis would make a tremendous positive difference in your personal life? That's a powerful question. And in question two, what one thing in your business or professional life would bring similar results? So he says that habit one says that you're the creator, you're in charge. In other words, you control your own destiny, because you're the only person who controls your own will and your own thoughts, your own self-awareness. Habit two is the first, or mental creation. So that concept of we can't create something unless we first envision it. So even the chair you're sitting on right now started off as, assuming you're sitting on chairs, aren't you? Yes, I think so. No one's hovering or anything like that. Stan might be. I can't see a chair there, so maybe Stan's hovering. Yeah.
I'm standing up.
Oh, well done.
I got my sit stand desk.
Okay, so even the stand desk that you're standing at was envisioned by somebody first in their mind's eye. So the first creation is somebody thinking something could be a thing and then creating it into existence. So the first thing is imagining it. The second creation is going to be where we actually bring it into reality. All right. So we're going to practice effective self-management by becoming principle-centered, day in, day out, moment by moment. There's a lot of noise that going on in the background there. Is somebody shuffling and rustling and moving things around? All right. The degree to which we have developed our independent will in our everyday lives is measured by our personal integrity. Integrity is fundamentally the value we place on ourselves. That's an interesting one, isn't it? Putting value on yourself. Are you limiting yourself by not putting enough value on yourself? I'm sure that all of us have areas where we're doing that. So this effective management is putting first things first, and it starts with discipline, which he, as he says, derives from the word disciple. Disciple to a philosophy, disciple to a set of principles, disciple to a set of values, disciple to an overriding purpose, to a subordinate goal or a person who represents that goal. Sorry, not subordinate, superordinate. Superordinate, I just read that. So you are a disciple or follower of your own deep values and their source. So this thing about we've all got values, we've all got ideas of how the world should be. And whether the world actually is the way it should be is unlikely a lot of the time, but we have our own sort of guiding principles as to how we think things should be. And we filter everything through those values and those beliefs. So he's saying, in order to become effective, the power to do something when you don't want to do it, to be a function of your values rather than a function of the impulse or desire of any given moment, is the power to act with integrity to your proactive first creation. Well, let's translate that. Okay, so if you want to lose weight and you have this whim that you want to eat some chocolate, are you going to go with the whim and how you feel, the impulse, or are you going to stick to your decision that you've made about your weight management? I'm just using that one as an example because it comes up for me quite a lot for some reason, particularly like chocolate. I can't help myself. Yes, I can. I can. Okay, so do we go with the impulses, or do we go with what we've decided we're going to do? So he talks about these generations, the 4 generations of time management. Feel free to chip in if you want to add something. So in the area of time management, each generation builds on the one before it. The first wave or generation could be characterized by notes and checklists. So the first way of thinking about how we should organize ourselves was sorting out our priorities by having lists and checklists and notes. I'm a great one for doing all that. The second generation would be characterized by calendars and appointment books. So really, you know, deciding which days we're going to do all these lists of things. The third generation reflects the current time management field, which adds to these preceding generations the important idea of prioritization, of clarifying values, and of comparing the relative worth of activities based on their relationship to those values. So you might have goals, lists of goals that you're going to do. You might plan to do them on your calendar this week, and you might go, well, that's an A goal, that's a B goal, that's a C goal. So you got not a seagull, a C goal, right? So you've got them sorted out. But the fourth generation, dun dun dun, he says, is different, because it recognizes that time management is really a misnomer. See, all this time I've been meaning to go on a time management course. I just didn't have the time to do it. But anyway, that aside, the challenge is not to manage time, but to manage ourselves. Ooh. So rather than focusing on things and time, fourth generation expectations focus on preserving and enhancing relationships and on accomplishing results. In short, on maintaining the PPC balance. The PPC balance, can we remember what that is? Production versus production capability. So remember the goose story, the golden goose? The production is the egg, the producer is the golden goose. So don't go and kill the goose because you'll run out of eggs. V, you got your hand up.
I had forgotten what the PPC means, and then he tells the goose story again, and then it makes sense. But what does it stand for again?
So the production or the products or what your output is, and the production capability is you. In a lot of cases, it's you are the producer.
Yes.
So this is why look after yourself and focus on yourself more than on the products or services, because you're the one who creates them. And we quite often forget that, don't we? Like, put ourselves last. Who's ever been guilty of putting themselves last and focusing on the job or the business or the activity and not making enough time for yourself?
I just had an example, Tony, of that, like these different categories, which I'd kind of been reading the book and I'd forgotten what those for what are they called? For
the time management matrix.
The 4 habits, the 4 generations of time management. Yeah.
Oh, the 4 generations.
Yeah. Yesterday I did what I usually don't do, because I find myself, okay, what I did was I put tasks in my calendar with reminders in my Outlook calendar to come and ping me when it's ready to do that task. And I have rebelled against that because I hate being told what to do by a computer. And I realized that I'm actually the one who programmed it.
Yes.
And
garbage out.
yes, and I actually accepted that these were actual priorities, and not to kind of sabotage myself by going, no, I'm not going to do that now because I want to do this. So it was a huge productive day yesterday because I just accepted and led myself. So it was good.
Well, that perfectly illustrates what he's just been saying. You know, we are led by the impulses. We know what we should be doing. We don't want to do that. We want to do what we want to be doing. So the discipline part is when we do what we know we need to do. We know, because it's going to get us closer to our goals, or it's going to fit in with our principles or our view, our vision of what we want to achieve. And yet, as human beings, we're all weak at times, and we all go with what we'd rather be doing than what we know we ought to be doing. And I hate that word should, but we're the ones who create the should in the first place. Different if you've got a boss telling you what you should be doing and you want to be doing your own thing, maybe. But for your, in terms of driving your own life, we know what we need to do to get the result. But then sometimes you've got to question, are we actually serious about that result? Because go back to that old analogy about going to the gym. If I should be going to the gym to get myself fit, to get the six-pack that I obviously now have concealed beneath my carton here, you know, I would know that I'd need to do that. But the reality is I don't want to go to the gym, so I'm not going. So I'd rather play volleyball all night, or go and work in the garden or something, or go for walks, or do other physical exercise, particularly sport, rather than just go and pump iron, whereas other people love doing that. But there's no point in me setting a goal that I know I'm not going to do, because it doesn't fit with who I am and what, you know, the way I operate. If I know I'm not going to discipline myself to do that, and I have in the past, I have gone and made myself go to the gym even when I didn't want to go, but I made the decision that it's a pointless exercise, me having a gym membership. I actually discovered that having the gym membership doesn't get you fit. You actually need to go there as well and do something. So there you go. Figure that one out. All right. So what he goes on to next is this time management matrix. That you've probably seen these four quadrants many times, or heard it discussed in other things, because it's become sort of part of management folklore now, if you like, this four grid situation where you've got things that are urgent, things that are not urgent, things that are important, and things that are not important. So what do we know we have to do and we must do first are the things that are urgent and important. And we know obviously that the things that are not urgent and not important, we shouldn't be touching until we've done the other stuff. And yet, if that's the thing we really want to be doing, we may sneakily go and do that stuff from that grid, even though we know we shouldn't be doing it. Here's the interesting one though, is that what comes second. And for most of us, it's the things that are urgent, but not really important. That's what tends to happen. We tend to go and do those things because they appear, oh, it's urgent, we have to do it. You know, the boss wants an answer, or the customer needs this by tomorrow, or, you know, so, but what's more important, but not urgent, is the stuff where we can make the biggest difference. Because if we can look at those things, they're the things like working on your business, or sharpening the saw, as he calls it later, working on yourself, adding the skills, or having a plan of how you're going to get there. It's no good rushing off and doing the thing if you don't have a plan, because then you're sort of haphazard in your approach. You know, you're firing all over the place instead of targeting what you need to be doing. So that's the sort of the summary, I guess, of this section is, we know we're going to do the important and urgent stuff first. But what do we do next? Do we put enough emphasis on the stuff we know is important, but it's not urgent? Because that's the thing that's going to really make the biggest difference moving forwards. Does that make sense to everyone? Or anyone got any questions about that or comments on it? All right. I think, so that means I can, and he mentions the Pareto principle you might have heard of as well, that 80% of the results fly out of 20% of the activities. And that 80-20 rule, as it's become known, you can apply to a lot of things. You know, 80% of your sales come from the 20% of your customers. 20% or 80% of your problems come from 20% of your customers as well. Hopefully not the same ones, but quite often we could fire a few of our clients or customers and be better off for it, because they're the ones who generate 80% of your problems. Anyone ever had that experience? I have. All right. Well, so he says this, and this is in orange, people, this bit here. This is important. Management follows leadership. The way you spend your time is a result of the way you see your time and the way you really see your priorities. That's powerful, isn't it? The way you spend your time in reality is the result of the way you see your time and the way you really see your priorities. Think about that for a moment. Where are you spending your time? Because that actually tells you what really is your priorities.
Tony, I've been thinking about that,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm actually wondering where, like, I probably need to just analyze that quadrant a bit more, because what I find myself doing is, if a client comes to me with a project, I prioritize that because it brings in money.
Yep.
However, in the meantime, I'm not actually proactively seeking the clients that I want, because I'm busy doing the work for the clients that I already have, and I don't do any focusing on marketing and putting myself out there. So, yeah.
Okay, well, that's a good question that you've raised there, and I don't have a 100% answer for it, because every situation is different. Obviously, there's certain situations where you have to do something because it's a key client and you need to help them, may override what we just were talking about. But what the underlying message I get from that is, have you learned when to say no? Yes, and also it's just clicked with me that I do actually have someone I can contract work to. So I should be delegating the money that brings the thing that brings money in, so I can do the not urgent but important stuff. Delegate. Yeah, delegation is one key aspect, or one key way of dealing with that problem. Another is managing your clients in terms of we're always managing expectations, aren't we? So, your clients will treat you the way you train them to treat you very often. So if they get used to the idea that you're always available and that you will drop everything just to do what they want you to do, then that's the way you'll get treated. If you put your value on yourself and on your own time, then you can sometimes say yes, but you can also reserve the right to sometimes say no. And as I said, every situation is different. Every client is different in terms of their importance to you, and in terms of the goals you've set for your own life and your own principle-centered leadership aspirations. So yeah, I tend to give them a timeline. So if they come to me with a project, I can give them an idea of when I can get it done. But I want to get it done quickly so that I can get the money in. So yeah, and this is the biggest challenge we all have, I think, is that sometimes we have to maybe do stuff we don't particularly want to do because we need the money, because the reality is we have to pay the bills. And that's a fact of life that we all have to deal with. Somehow we all have to survive, and the tax man needs to get paid, and the bank won't wait for the mortgage payment and things like that. So there's certain obligations that we have, that we've set up for ourselves in our life, that we have to fulfill. And maybe there's we need to have a sort of have our bases covered. But I think this is talking more generally in terms of moving towards being more effective by really being clear about what's important to you, and then focusing on those things, and then asking yourself the question, am I just reacting, or am I being proactive here? And if you spend most of your time being reactive, then you're at the mercy of everybody else and everything else, rather than working on what you want to be working on and moving in the direction you want to move. So it's that focus. The key is, I think this is an important one. Somehow this got highlighted in green, because this must have been in the old days before I did yellow and orange, So this was the first time I read the book. This got highlighted, and it was, the key is not to prioritize what's on your schedule, but to schedule your priorities. There you go. Jane, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I think like Veronica, what you were speaking about, can't there be a built-in feature whereby you're taking on the needs of the existing client, but at the same time, you're asking for additional business through you're servicing them, but at the same time, you're saying, is there anyone else that could use my services? Would you happen to know of someone that I could contact that might want to take me on as I guess what's your line of work?
Well, this is talking about my accounting at the moment, but I also do coaching, and yeah, that's another level I need to add more or talk about more to my clients. As you said, is like as I'm talking to them, I'm finding that there's issues, especially around money, where they have a relationship with money that is not healthy.
Right.
So that involves the coaching. So you did right, Jane. It's about actually letting them know, like through the conversation, or as I'm doing things, it's like adding value to that job. And it's a good point to ask if they know anybody else that they would recommend.
Yeah, especially when the client is saying, "Oh, this is helpful." And you say, "Oh, well, I'm so glad that we got this figured out for you. And is there anyone else in your same position that you know of that I could help out in a similar fashion?" You know, so therefore you really are.
That's a much simpler way of marketing, Jane. Thank you.
Yeah.
Good points. Yeah. So I'm just aware of time, so just got to move it along a little. One of the things that he brings up and there's quite a lot in that section about how to sort of keep yourself on track. But one of the key things he talks about is looking more of a helicopter view, shall we say, planning on a weekly basis rather than on a daily or by the moment basis. So scheduling chunks of time and looking in that sense at, am I allocating a section of time this week to work on the stuff, to work on my business, to work on the things that are going to move me more strategically towards where I want to go, and chunking out that time or blocking out that time for yourself, rather than, you still can sometimes have to override that if people warrant it. So he talks about the difference between being effective with people and efficient with things. So this is part of this fourth generation leadership style, or self-management style that he's talking about, that it's different to the other three. The other three being where you're sort of making lists and you're putting them on the calendar and you're following through in that sense. This is more principle centered. So it's looking at what is really important to you in terms of moving strategically towards where you want to be. It's conscience directed. So you have to be in harmony with your deepest values, but also free to subordinate your schedule to higher values. Excuse me. Third, it defines your unique mission, including your values and your long-term goals. Fourth, it helps you to balance your life by identifying roles. We talked about the roles before. Is your role as a parent or as a partner more important than your role as a business owner or as an employee or whatever it is that you do? It gives you greater context through weekly organizing. So having that stepping back and looking at the helicopter view, the overview of things, as if you're looking down on your life for this week and what you were trying to achieve. And the practical thread running through all 5 of these advances is a primary focus on relationships and results and a secondary focus on time. So this is a key point from this chapter, and this habit of putting first things first is that the focus is on relationships and results, not on time itself. because the time itself will take care of itself if you focus on the people and the relationships and the results. And yes, delegation, as Jane said, key thing. A difference. A manager or a producer can invest 1 hour of effort and produce 1 unit of results, assuming no loss of efficiency. A manager, on the other hand, can invest 1 hour of effort and produce 10 or 50 or 100 units through effective delegation. The key to effective management is delegation. Now, then he talks about the 2 types of delegation: go for delegation and stewardship delegation. So go for delegation, where you tell someone, go do this, go get that, jump here, do that, stand there, do as I say. And stewardship delegation is focused on the results instead of the methods. So allowing people to think for themselves, encouraging people. One of the things I've always done as a manager is to, with my staff, is to say, sure, come to me with a problem, but try to come to me with a problem and a solution that you've thought through. And yes, then we can discuss that possible solution, and maybe I'll give you a better one, but at least it's encouraging them to think for themselves, how could I deal with this problem, rather than just being the person who keeps coming up with the problem and no idea of how it's going to get fixed. So the more that's developing people to be accountable for themselves, to think things through for themselves, to identify resources they might need, give people guidelines, give them accountability, sure. Give them consequences of what might happen if they get it wrong, or they, do it the wrong way. But encourage them to be self-directed, I suppose, more. And then you have not just an employee, but you have an effective employee, and you build trust, and they trust you that you're not, because how have you all had a boss like that that's telling you what to do all the time, micromanaging you? Isn't it damned annoying? It's like being treated like a child, isn't it? Now, sometimes the situation warrants it. Obviously, you've got to put the disclaimer in. If you're the leading surgeon on the brain surgery and you need that assistant to put the clamp there, you're going to tell them, put that clamp there now. You're not going to go, I think you should ponder where you think the clamp should best go, and is that the right type of clamp to be using? You've got to, sometimes you just have to direct people. But if you've got this helicopter view of things, trying to get people to think through how they could best achieve the result for themselves, and sure, as a manager, you check on people, you guide them, but you trust them as well. So it says, it goes on to say, and this is highlighted in orange, trust is the highest form of human motivation. It brings out the very best in people, but it takes time and patience, and it doesn't preclude the necessity to train and develop people so that their competency can rise to the level of that trust. So yeah, you don't just trust someone to go and do the brain surgery without giving them the training first, and you get them to show you that they have earned that trust. Big chapter, hey? You might have seen some of that stuff before, but and even when you know it, doing it is another thing. Even when you know about the urgent, important, and the not urgent and not important and all that, we still find ourselves doing the things we know we'd rather be doing than what will actually move us the furthest forwards to where we want to be. So that requires self-discipline. But self-discipline is easier to maintain if you have the end in mind. If you're putting first things first, it's easier to do that when you have identified what the end is. So you begin with the end in mind, which was habit 2. So you can see how these build on each other. Firstly, you need to know, where was habit 1? Being proactive. You need to know what your mission is, or what your vision is, or what your goal is, all those things. Habit 2 is beginning with that end in mind. And then habit 3 is putting first things first, doing the things that we know will get us closer to where we want to be. rather than being dragged here, there, and everywhere by other people, by other priorities, by other people's priorities, by life in general, by the world, the universe, COVID, whatever it is. Some things we can't control, obviously, but you know, if we look at least we know where we're trying to get to, then we can work on these 3 habits, get those 3 habits right, and we have what we call private victory. So that was that first section in full, is achieving private victory, victory over ourselves and our whims. Anyone got anything to add to that before we go on to the first part of the next section? We're all stunned, deep in thought, pondering where we're stuffing it up and not allocating our right time priorities.
Definitely lots to ponder in that.
Yes, damn it. We know, we all know deep down we're doing it, aren't we? All right, well, we go on to, this is the introduction to the next part. So we're going to be moving on to the public victory. And that's where we start to, if we know what we're doing ourselves, we can then start to influence other people or impact on our society or people around us in a positive way, towards the next thing, which will be win-win. But we're just going to start with this paradigms of interdependence. That's what we'll cover today, and we won't be able to get any further forward than that, I don't think. No, we won't. So Samuel Johnson quote to start this chapter: there can be no friendship without confidence, and no confidence without integrity. All right, well, you can't be successful with other people if you haven't paid the price of success with yourself. Profound stuff, insightful. We have to, you know, we have to work on our own self-mastery and self-discipline, and in order to build good relationships with other people. You can't just talk the talk, you've actually got to walk the talk as well, haven't you? And the most important ingredient we put into any relationship is not what we say or what we do, but what we are. There's that old saying, I can't, what you say speak so, or sorry, what you are speak so loudly, I cannot hear what you say. It's one thing to say we should be doing this and you should do that, but if you're not doing it yourself, then you just come across as a hypocrite, don't you? None of us want to be that. So as we become independent, proactive, centered in correct principles, value-driven, all good things, and able to organize and execute around the priorities in our life with integrity, we can then choose to become interdependent, capable of building rich, enduring, highly productive relationships with other people. And that's one of the biggest things, isn't it? If you do what you say you're going to do, and you don't let people down, you don't let yourself down first. That's how it starts, isn't it? You don't let yourself down. Whatever you commit to, do it. Or if you can't commit to it, say so, but don't try and say you're going to do one thing and then do something else. And that's when it impacts on other people and lets them down, and you lose trust. You think, oh, well, he doesn't do what he says he's going to do, so I can't trust his word. Going back to the 4 agreements, you know, Don Miguel Ruiz, be impeccable with your word. And that starts with you being impeccable to yourself with your word. All right. So he talks about this emotional bank account. You know, it's a metaphor that describes the amount of trust that's been built up in a relationship, the feeling of safeness that you have with another human being. You think about the different roles you have in your life. If you have a partner, you build up that sense of trust over time with your partner, don't you? You know that they know who you are, you know who they are, you know what you're going to do, what you say you're going to do, and you can trust in each other. And he says our most constant relationships, like marriage, require our most constant deposits. if you don't see somebody very often, like you said, I can't remember if it was in this chapter, I think it was, because I was listening to it on the audio as well. You know, sometimes you forget when you're listening to the audio, where did that fit in the big picture of the book? But he was talking about, you have a friend you might not have seen for years, and you pick up instantly where you left off, because there's been nothing to affect that negatively or even perhaps positively. If you haven't been in contact with each other, you just carry on as to where you left off, don't you? Whereas the day-to-day interactions you have with somebody that you're with all the time, whether it's a child or a parent or sister or a brother or a partner or a work colleague, the boss, the people that you have close interactions with, you've got to keep on putting deposits in the emotional bank account. You've got to keep on being consistent, keep on being, you know, constant and reliable, and the person that they think you are, the person you'd like to be. So suggest the 6 major deposits that build the emotional bank account. So understanding the individual, really seeking to understand another person, is probably one of the most important deposits you can make, and what is the key to every other deposit. Trying to understand someone, that's quite an important thing, isn't it? Understanding what makes them tick, putting the effort into that. And I love this quote at the end of that section, which is, as one successful parent said about raising children, treat them all the same by treating them differently. How cool was that? Everyone, you can't have a one-size-fits-all kind of approach to people. We need to take people at where they're at. I love that twist on the old quote, you know, about treat people the way you'd like to be treated. Instead, it should be treat people the way they'd like to be treated. Because the way you'd like to be treated might not be the way they like to be treated. It's a start, but it's not. It's, you know, like we wouldn't want something horrible to happen to us, so we don't want something horrible to happen to him, but they may want a different thing to what we want. So consider it, look through their eyes. So building rapport, building empathy, building understanding with people. So he talks about attending to the little things, the little kindnesses and courtesies. Just taking a moment to ask someone if they're okay, or if they need anything, or if you can be of any help in any way. This is what builds trust over time. There's deposits in the emotional bank account. Keeping commitments, as we just said before, you know, doing what you say you're going to do, not letting people down. Clarifying expectations. This is a huge one. The cause of almost all relationship difficulties is rooted in conflicting or ambiguous expectations around roles and goals. You think about any of the arguments you have with people in any situation, whether it's in the home or in business, or, you know, what's the most common thing is you think something ought to be a certain way and they think it ought to be a different way. And you haven't clarified that. You know, if you look at marriage breakups, business partnership breakups, what one person expects from the other, any kind of relationship, you're the business and you've got a customer. What's the customer's expectation? Have you clarified that? Are they expecting the same thing that you think they are? Because if you're not, you've got a recipe for conflict coming up. V.
Yes, I think it's something that I have had to learn, and I still don't do it all the time, is to actually start the conversation with what the outcome, what your desired outcome is, and set the attention there, rather than, you know, just starting to waffle on and then you're not getting understood, and then you forget about what your purpose was with the whole conversation. And yeah, it's so important to start where you want to finish.
Wise words. And also figuring out where they want to finish. And is it the same?
Exactly. Yeah. So,
you know,
clarifying expectations. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
everybody.
so important. Yeah, and I find that in business all the time, that it's where you think this ought to be done this way and they think it ought to be done that way. And you each think that the other is on the same page. But if
we come to the table with all these assumptions that everybody wants what I want.
Yeah. Because it makes sense, doesn't it? It makes sense to you, but does it make sense to them? And the simple way to figure that out is to ask. So often we just forget to ask that question, or ask them to feed it back to you. You know, that this is a great one with children, isn't it? What did I just tell you? What did I just ask you to do? I thought I asked you to go and clean your room, and they think you said clean your room later after you finish watching that TV program or whatever it is, you know. So have we got the same sense of priority, the same sense of urgency, same clarity about what I'm expecting versus what you're expecting? So important in all areas of our life, isn't it? And so damaging in business when you get it wrong. You know, that's where you end up with an irate customer. You sold me this product and I thought it was going to do this. Well, no, it doesn't say it's going to do that. It says it's going to do this. Yeah, but I thought it was going to do that. Well, it doesn't. You know? So how important is that clarification? So integrity, personal integrity, which generates trust, includes but goes beyond honesty. Honesty is telling the truth. In other words, conforming our words to reality. Integrity is conforming reality to our words. In other words, keeping promises and fulfilling expectations. Do you know what? I missed highlighting that bit. I just saw that. Isn't that true? Isn't that powerful? Honesty is telling the truth, conforming our words to reality. Integrity is conforming reality to our words, keeping promises and fulfilling expectations. This requires an integrated character, a oneness, primarily with self, but also with life. And I love this point here. We've had this mentioned to us by friends recently. Friends have said to us, we like hanging out with you because you don't sit there slagging off all your other friends. So one of the most important ways to manifest integrity is to be loyal to those who are not present. In doing so, we build the trust of those who are present. When you defend those who are absent, you retain the trust of those present. If you're sitting there gossiping about people, the person you're gossiping to could be sitting there thinking, if they're saying that about that guy, what are they saying about me when I'm not here? Isn't that powerful? So
I'm having fun in a country town, Tony, where people, I've said I've met someone and I'm speaking to friend A and they go, oh, don't trust them, blah, blah, blah. And I'm speaking to friend B and they go, oh, they're lovely. And it's like, how about I'm going to make up my own mind.
Yeah, that's a really good point, B. And it's so easy to fall into the trap of judging, criticizing, condemning other people, and we don't necessarily know the whole story. Are we basing our comments on fact? That was a great example of that. I'll find it and put it in the on the Facebook page. It was in the other book I'm reading about the Ikigai journey, and it was about this, the questions that the master asked the student who comes in with a problem like that. Can't remember it all. I'll get it word for word, but the starting point is what you're about to tell me based on truth or on hearsay? You know, how many times do we repeat things that actually we don't know for sure whether that was true? It's just what someone's told us is true. Well, what if that was filtered through their version of how they saw things, through their expectations, through their values? And if it's not even them, it's somebody that they've been told, the further down the line it goes, the less reliable that information is. And we're in a world today where we're all at the mercy of these spin doctors, aren't we? The news. How do we know what's true and what's not true? Do we have the real facts? Did we in fact land on the moon? I don't know. Maybe I'll never know. The more I see them having problems with the current space rocket, I'm thinking, if they can't figure it out now, how did they figure it out back then? I'm starting to have my doubts. But anyway, that's a whole other topic. In the long run, people will trust and respect you if you are open and honest and kind with them. You care enough to confront. Now, that doesn't mean being brutally destructive in your comments to someone. You know, does my bum look big in this kind of question? Well, actually, tread carefully. Treat people with respect, but you can still be honest. We've talked about that. You can still, people will respect you more if you are not just telling them what they want to hear, but giving an honest opinion. But I qualify that with use caution and back it up with facts and be kind and that sort of thing. Apologize sincerely when you make a withdrawal. Well, this is such an important one. How sad is an apology when we go, well, you didn't mean that, did you? You're saying you're sorry, but I can tell you're not really. You can, you know, underlying that apology, you can always tell when someone's not really being sincere about it, or they're kind of justifying, well, I'm sorry, but you can understand why I thought that, you know. We've all had that, haven't we? People will forgive mistakes, but people will not easily forgive the mistakes of the heart, the ill intention, the bad motives, the prideful justifying covering up of the first mistake. All right. The laws of love and the laws of life. When we make these deposits of unconditional love, when we live the primary laws of love, we encourage others to live the primary laws of life. When we truly love others without condition, without strings, we help them feel secure and safe and validated and affirmed in their essential worth, identity, and integrity. Their natural growth process is encouraged. We make it easier for them to live the laws of life, cooperation, contribution, self-discipline, integrity, and to discover and live true to the highest and best within them. We give them the freedom to act on their own inner imperatives rather than react to our conditions and limitations. So the rebellion is a knot of the heart, not of the mind, a knot as in K-N-O-T. The key is to make deposits, constant deposits of unconditional love. So I think with what says to me there, you know, you think in terms of being a parent, you can criticize the behavior, but still love the child. You know, I'm not saying you're a bad person. I'm saying I don't like what you did there, or, you know, what I would prefer to see you doing is this. So you're trying to, when you always relate it back to children, when employees are like children, aren't they? Very often, you treat them not condescendingly like children. I mean, in terms of explaining to them why you want something done a certain way, giving them the parameters, giving them the consequences, explaining to them, but doing it with love, doing it from the heart, seeing the best in people, encouraging them, but giving them all that surrounding stuff so that they get it, you know, so they're on the same page as you. Does that make sense? Okay. This was an interesting one. He talks about this Dag Hammarskjöld. I know it's pronounced Hammarskjöld because I had a clover shield that worked for me. It was a Swedish name. So that's how it's pronounced. Past Secretary General of the United Nations once made a profound, far-reaching statement. Drum roll. It is more noble to give yourself completely to one individual than to labor diligently for the salvation of the masses. And I like this as his take on this, Stephen Covey's take on this. I take that to mean that I could devote 8, 10, or 12 hours a day, 5, 6, or 7 days a week to the thousands of people and projects out there and still not have a deep, meaningful relationship with my own spouse, my own teenage son, with my closest working associate. And it would take more nobility of character, more humility, courage, and strength to rebuild that one relationship than it would to continue putting in all those hours for all those people and causes. Oh, that's powerful, isn't it? We could be there trying to save the world and missing what's on our own doorstep. So we start at home. It's that old saying, charity begins at home. Look after the people who are closest to us, who really matter the most to us. And it's so easy in a social media world where we spend all our time looking at the screen and interacting with people around the world and forgetting the person who's right next to us on the couch, you know. That would never happen in my household, of course. Anyway, creating the unity necessary to run an effective business or a family or a marriage requires great personal strength and courage. That's interesting, isn't it? Strength and courage. No amount of technical administrative skill in laboring for the masses can make up for a lack of nobility of personal character in developing relationships. It is at a very essential one-on-one level that we live the primary laws of love and life. Well, he talks about P problems are PC opportunities. So every problem, every production problem is a production capability opportunity, a chance to build the emotional bank accounts that significantly affect interdependent production. So instead of looking at a problem, look at an opportunity to build a relationship. Instead of seeing the thing that the child has done wrong, look at how you could show them what's important in life, how not just to do it right, but why to do it right, and what goes behind that. Who are we as people? Who are we trying to be? Does that make sense? That's my take on it. Anyway, that's just a personal take on it. So feel free to disagree if you have anything you want to add to that or challenge it.
It sounds like the helicopter view again.
Yeah, I think so. The habits of interdependence. So with the paradigm of the emotional bank account in mind, we're ready to move into the habits of public victory, of success in working with other people. That's the segue into the whole next section, which we're not going to cover today now because we're out of time. But we've covered the private victory and how understanding the importance of the emotional bank account and the importance of looking at things from another person's point of view, of trying to get on the same page as them, trying to see why are they seeing it that way, trying to understand people. So really, this is the underlying essence of NLP, really, is the more we neuro-linguistic programming and patterning, the more we understand what is driving that other person's behavior. Where are they coming from? Why are they thinking that way? Why are they looking at the situation that way? What are their aspirations? The more we can look at how the other person's map of the world works, then we can see how we can best guide them or how we can best influence or inspire them to work towards what they want. Excuse me 1 second. I'll be right there. We've got a tradie and it needs someone to go up a ladder, and I don't think it's going to be Joe. I think it's going to be me. So on that note, does anyone have any last words before we call a halt on this meeting today?
What are we reading next week, Tony?
That's a good question, V. You have so many good questions. Well, we're moving into the next part 3, public victory. So we will be covering, well, we have already started in that because we've done the paradigms, the introductory part of it, which is paradigms of interdependence. We're going to go habit 4, think win-win. How big a chapter is that? I think we can do habit 5 as well. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. So we'll aim for habits 4 and 5.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
I think habit 4 is going to be a big big one for me.
Yes. And it's a very powerful one. Think win-win. Always look to those differences when we can go into that, but it's the most powerful method of building businesses as well, is always look for not only how do I win, but how does the other person win? And if there's multiple people involved, how does everybody get a win out of this? Make a big difference to your business when you get that right. Okay, no other last thoughts? Jane, you good? Coralie, anything to add? Stan? All right, I've got a tradie waiting, so I'm going to have to get going. I've got to go climb the ladder. I'll see you next week, guys. Thank you.